Oh, you thought the second case in this game was tragic? You ain't seen nothing yet. Get ready for pain! After writing my video on the second case, I was pretty certain that it was my favourite in this game. But then I went on to replay this case for the third time to record this footage, and ended up deciding that this one was in fact my favourite. I feel like any of the cases I go on to make videos about, I could argue are my favourite. That's something I love so much about this series. You're always finding more things to enjoy. Anyway, this case is so good. It has some great character development, a nice contained story, it's hugely important to the overall plot, and has some amazing emotional beats. Right, first on the chopping block is... In my first video, I mentioned a few things that added to the atmosphere of paranoia and distrust, and I think that this case is where that atmosphere reaches its peak. The entire chapter is structured around the themes of trust and betrayal. In the first scene, it seems as if we've finally reached a point where we trust that there will be no more murders. At least with the 5 of us that are still attempting to cooperate. Byakuya and Toko are off being suspicious as usual. But even in this scene, there is that uncertainty. You saw Sakura talking to and fighting Monokuma, and suspects that she might be the mastermind spy that Byakuya suggested there was. So of course, in this happy scene of camaraderie, you are still very wary of Sakura and don't know what the future holds. Then, the chain of betrayals begins. Sakura, who was being blackmailed into being a spy for Monokuma, betrays him and tries to fight against him. Monokuma, who always wants to keep the upper hand and create discord in the group, tells everyone that the traitor who betrayed their trust is Sakura. And then the camaraderie completely disappears and everyone starts fighting. So basically, Byakuya, Toko and Hiro are extremely distrustful of Sakura, Byakuya going as far to say it would be so much easier if she were to just die. Hina, who is closest to Sakura, of course defends her and gets very emotional about the whole situation. Then there's Yu and Kyoko, who are just kind of neutral, but given your quick defense of Sakura when Monokuma first reveals her to be the traitor, I'd say we were more on the side of Sakura and Hina. Monokuma's announcement is successful in creating a strong divide among us. This leads to 2 fights. The first fight is Hina slapping Byakuya, which is beautiful. Then later, Genocide Jill attacks Hina. After this, the death happens and we discover Sakura's body. Now, let's talk about all the distrust and betrayal in the actual murder case. The second we all find the body, Hina immediately places all the blame on Byakuya, Toko and Hiro. She hasn't trusted them at all during this chapter, and tries to throw them under the bus here, despite already knowing that Sakura committed suicide. While her anger towards them is genuine, her suspicion of them is completely faked. Also, during the investigation, both Toko and Hiro very obviously lie to your face, saying that they never went to go see Sakura when both of them actually did. This case is a perfect example of each character having their own secret motives and knowing more than they are letting on. I think that one of the most interesting elements of a mystery story with an ensemble cast is this feeling of uncertainty you get about everyone. You never really know what they're thinking or what they're hiding, and I just eat it up. This all comes to a head in the trial. Both Hiro and Toko believe that they are the ones who killed Sakura, so they try to push the conversation away from them and hide evidence. While their main aim in this trial is just to survive themselves, they are still willing to betray everyone else and let them die in order to win. Hina tries to make it look like she murdered Sakura because her goal is to make everyone die, and we'll get into the ins and outs of that in a minute. Then there's Byakuya, who is certain that Hina did it and just wants to be proved right to further stroke his ego, because, as we already know, he only really cares about his own life. And finally, there's Yu and Kyoko, who just honestly want to solve the mystery. All these different motives and personalities clashing makes this trial so full of twists and turns. It's so entertaining. Right, now I'm going to talk about Hina's actions in this case, and why I feel that her character is hugely underrated. Up to this chapter in the game, Hina kind of flew under the radar for me. She is really nice and optimistic, but also doesn't stand aside when Byakuya or someone else is spouting bullshit. People tend to boil her down to a nice girl with big tits who has a strange obsession with donuts. But this chapter in particular proves that she is so much more. Her friendship with Sakura during this game has been very constant up to this point. What I've always loved about their friendship is just how natural it feels. Hina seems to be the only one who has completely looked past Sakura's intimidating appearance from the start, choosing to get to know her and see her as who she is inside. While this "don't judge a book by its cover" message is very prevalent in media, I really love how it's used here because there is never any actual focus on it. Neither Hina or Sakura, or anyone else for that matter, mention looking past appearances. It's just something that Hina does without thinking, and I think we could all strive to be more like this. Hina and Sakura's friendship made a lot of sense to me. They probably initially bonded through their love of sports, and then just got to know each other better through spending time with each other for the whole game. Hina is significantly closer to Sakura than anyone else in this game, so of course she would strongly defend her friend against anyone who doubts her. Hina is someone who has already shown herself to be someone who follows their emotions more than logic. So while her actions here took me by surprise, they feel really authentic for the character. So, in this chapter, Sakura understands why Byakuya, Toko and Hiro are distrustful of her and sends out letters that invite them to talk with her. Byakuya just doesn't go, which makes perfect sense for him. Toko is very doubtful about it, so goes earlier and hides in the room. Hiro is very scared and on edge, but still turns up. Hiro gets really scared and freaked out, and fearing Sakura is going to kill him, he attacks her with a bottle. Then, thinking he'd killed her, tries to pin some evidence on Toko before fleeing. Toko sees Hiro betraying her and hides his evidence, only to faint at the sight of blood and turn into Genocide Jill, who then gets spooked by Sakura's face and also attacks her with the bottle. At this point, Sakura has done nothing but attempt to talk to them, and she's been hit in the head with a bottle. Twice! It's honestly so heartbreaking. But it's so much more heartbreaking for Hina when she passes by and sees her best friend in this situation. She leaves to get her a drink, but when she comes back, sees that Sakura is now dead and reads Monokuma's forged suicide note that tells of how Sakura felt pushed into a corner out of choices. Hina is horrified. While she mainly blames Byakuya, Toko and Hiro, she also blames herself and the others for not helping Sakura in her time of need. In her mind, the death of her friend could have been avoided, and it's all of our faults. So, she decides that we all need to die, and takes steps to ensure that we all get the wrong answer in the trial. This revelation at the end of the trial that Hina was trying to betray us and get us all killed really shocks me. Hina had always been one of the characters who seemed more genuine and nice. Like, there are a lot of weird and wonderful characters in this series, and Hina seemed relatively normal by comparison. Like someone I'd go eat donuts with. I would say that I, as a player, trusted Hina. The fact that even someone like Hina was capable of lying and betraying us, I thought was really effective at getting across the themes in this chapter. Okay, that's enough of betrayal for now. Let's move on to one of the characters I've neglected to mention thus far. Like I said in my last video, Kyoko is probably my favourite character from the first game, and this is a really good chapter for her. All the way through the game, she's very cool and collected. Although she acts very mysteriously, you always feel that she's someone you can trust. And in this chapter is the first time she shows a more human side. At the end of the last chapter, she tells you about some of the investigating she has been doing around the school, and even tells you the location of a secret room. At the start of this chapter, you are worried about what you saw with Sakura, and Kyoko immediately picks up on your strange behaviour and asks you about it. It is at this point where the game offers you a choice to tell her or not tell her about Sakura. However, no matter which one you pick, Makoto just doesn't tell her. This is a nice reminder that you are not playing as yourself in this game, you're playing as Makoto, and you can't do or say things that he wouldn't do or say. After not telling her your secret, Kyoko seems a bit peeved and starts to completely ignore you. even going as far to ask Hiro to tell her when you leave the dining hall at breakfast, so that she can go and eat once you'd already left. Her cold shoulder seems unwarranted to Makoto, and came across sort of childish to me on my first playthrough. But given the themes of this chapter being trust and betrayal, it now seems completely warranted. Kyoko is an extremely secretive person, and has had the tendency to distance herself from the group on occasion. Yet, at this point in the game, she decides to share some of her findings with us. For someone as private as Kyoko to share information with us, especially given the situation and how valuable her information is, she must have had to think really hard about whether or not she trusted us. After coming to the conclusion that we were trustworthy and telling us what she knew, we deliberately told her that we know something important but can't tell her. She took this as, we don't trust her enough to tell her. And since it probably took her a lot of blind faith to trust in us, the fact that we don't trust her in return must have been like a massive slap in the face for her. So, for me, her annoyance at us makes perfect sense. I also really love the way she completely blanks us to show that she's annoyed. It's a really childish way of dealing with a disagreement, and for someone as cool and logical as Kyoko to show this childish side makes her seem much more human. She's not always in control, she's not always emotionless and cold, and I love her for it. Eventually, she thinks about her actions more, and realises that we didn't hide it from her because we didn't trust her, but rather because we wanted to trust in Sakura, and didn't want to cause a panic before talking to Sakura about it. So, she forgives us. She tells us that the reason she was hurt was because she felt that we didn't trust her, and admits that she might have overreacted. Despite her childish first reaction, she goes away and thinks about it, and then resolves the issue in a very mature way. Although I really love this more childish side of Kyoko, this chapter also gives her a fair share of cool moments. The biggest of these is probably her interactions with Byakuya. After Byakuya shows how insensitive he is to Hina's emotions early in the chapter, Kyoko warns him that completely disregarding the feelings of others is stupid and will come back to bite him. And oh ho ho, it does indeed. After his investigation, Byakuya looks through the evidence and comes to the conclusion that Hina killed Sakura. Since he is an emotionless prick who only cares about himself, he can't even fathom that Hina would willingly pin the whole thing on herself to kill everyone out of pure despair and guilt over the death of her friend. So once you and Kyoko start telling him that there's something more to the mystery after Hina gets suspected, he gets so damn angry that he couldn't figure it out. And the reason he couldn't do it is because he failed to take people's emotions into account, the thing Kyoko warned him about earlier. I said last time that it was fun to piss Byakuya off, and this trial is an all-you-can-eat buffet of laughing at this absolute dickhead. Another tiny moment that makes me love Kyoko is the way she stops an argument between Byakuya and Hina. I have a deep-seated hatred for characters in films, books, or TV, where the creators tell you time after time that they're smart, but they do absolutely nothing intelligent in the entire thing. Like, oh yeah, he's the smartest guy in school, he's so smart, look at all these people discussing how capable and smart he is. Oh, what smart things does he do? He reads a book this one time. A reason why I love Kyoko is how she's actually smart. No one tells you she's smart, but she thinks through all of her actions with an objective mindset and always speaks and acts intelligently. And some examples of this, like this moment, go completely under the radar. When Hina and Byakuya get in a very heated argument, which ends in Byakuya daring Hina to try and kill him, and Hina saying that she could do it. So, fair to say, very heated, Kyoko is able to stop it with a single line of dialogue. She says, "This is exactly what the mastermind wants, and it's exactly what Sakura doesn't want." She uses her knowledge of both people to appeal to them individually. Byakuya always wants to be on top, and would hate the idea of being controlled by the mastermind. So, Kyoko saying that he's doing what the mastermind wants is basically her saying, if you continue to do this, You are playing right into the mastermind's hands. You are letting them manipulate you. And Kyoko appeals to Hina by telling her that although you think you are doing this for Sakura, if you think about it, this is not what Sakura would want you to do at all. This is just one example of Kyoko using her intelligence to benefit the group. It's such a good character development, and it flies mostly under the radar. The final thing I want to mention about Kyoko in this chapter is just her casual savagery. And by that, I mean this one moment. After you and Kyoko make up, you work together to take Alter Ego to the secret room and plug it into the network. The second it's over, Kyoko goes to leave, and Makoto, ever annoyed by Kyoko's tendency to leave abruptly once the conversation is over, questions her directness. And Kyoko responds by telling him, "You're so high maintenance." The first time this happened, I almost spat out my tea. It made me laugh so much. This moment alone probably bumped Kyoko up to my favourite character spot. This chapter is structurally great, not only within itself, but also as a turning point for the rest of the game. The chapter has a really nice story arc. We start off seemingly coming together and deciding that there won't be any more deaths, but there's still that sense of uneasiness in us about Sakura, and neither Byakuya or Toko are cooperating. However, by the end of this chapter, everyone who is left has a real sense of trust and togetherness. We decide officially as a complete team that we will not fight each other, but instead fight the mastermind together. While Sakura had to die and we all had to betray each other to get to this point, it's still a nice and significant moment. I imagine the structure of this chapter to be like a mountain. It starts off pretty chill, then it gradually gets more and more stressful and intense. We fall out with Kyoko, then Sakura's betrayal is revealed, then Hina slaps Byakuya, Genocide Jill attacks Hina, then Hiro and Toko attack Sakura, and then everyone turns on each other in the trial? That's probably the peak of the mountain. Then everyone reads Sakura's proper suicide note and calms down, and then everyone decides to move past all this hardship and work together. How wholesome! But wait, this chapter doesn't end wholesomely. Monokuma is obviously not too pleased that everyone is coming together and just has to get the upper hand in every situation. Because he can't perform a proper execution, since Sakura is technically the killer and she's already dead, he has to find someone to execute to lower the strangely good morale. So, everything goes dark, and then you see the face of Alter Ego. This moment was so goddamn effective. Alter Ego gets absolutely destroyed in one of the most brutal executions, which is really saying something since Alter Ego is just an AI program on a laptop. Alter Ego was our main resource for finding out information about our situation and who might be responsible for it, so to see him so brutally ripped away and crushed is like watching our hope of escape get crushed as well. Monokuma saying that he knew about Alter Ego the whole time is also really hard hitting. We were all as a group getting our hopes up and felt that we were outsmarting the mastermind by investigating behind their back. We thought that we might finally get the upper hand, but to know that we never had the upper hand is really demoralizing. Earlier in this chapter, when Monokuma said, "an eye for an eye," he was mainly addressing Sakura, saying that betrayal will be met with betrayal. However, the line came back to my mind after seeing Alter Ego's execution, since it had the exact same effect. It's a power move. This execution tells us that if we try to go up against Monokuma, he can and will retaliate. One final thing I thought I'd mention about the structure of this chapter is that Sakura is the final person in the main cast to die. When you think about it, the first game only actually had 4 proper cases, since the 5th and 6th trials are really just us fighting Monokuma and the mastermind taking matters into their own hands. This case really marks a turning point in the game, and I think it comes about really naturally and is really well executed. I I do have a few problems with this case though, as nothing is perfect. I think that this case is extremely rushed. When I was replaying it to get this footage, I could literally go through all of it in one sitting in the morning and then get on with my day. The last few chapters of this first game do kind of have the tendency to rush through things. I think the 5th chapter is the worst at this, but you can kind of justify it then with the context. But I think that here, they could have taken a bit more time, just to give the dramatic events some space to breathe. One other nitpick I had with this trial was how there were 3 separate Moment of Truth minigames. I feel that the difficulty level with the trial minigames in the first game are a bit muddled. I found that with most of them, being on the mean difficulty wasn't actually that mean, and anything less just felt a bit slow and easy. However, I had so much trouble trying to get through this minigame on the mean difficulty. Maybe I'm just stupid and doing it wrong, but I would literally have to die like 5 times to eventually get through it on pure luck. Like I said, this is more of a personal nitpick than a problem, but let me know if you had a similar experience. Every time it came up in a trial, I would groan. Like, I can deal with it once at the end of the trial, but 3 times? It's torture. Despite these things, I really believe this is a great Danganronpa case, and hopefully I have transferred my thoughts to you reasonably successfully. Anyway, that's all for this video. Thanks for watching.